Have you ever just looked at something, like a weird mushroom or fallen leaf, and thought to yourself, is that actually alive? I mean, it seems like a really simple question, right? But the line between what's living and what's not is way more fascinating than you might think. Today, we're going to dive into the official checklist that scientists use to make that exact call.
And this whole big question can start with something super simple, like this. A kid finds a snail shell. It's not moving at all, it's just sitting there. But there could be a living snail inside, right? So how can something that's totally still be considered alive? Well, that's the mystery we're unpacking today.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get into that big question, alive or not alive. Then, we're going to learn the 7 official rules of life. After that, we'll see those rules in action with a plant's journey, check out some mind-blowing animal transformations, and then we'll tie it all together with the idea of the circle of life.
So let's jump right in with that central challenge. You look around, and the world is just full of things that move and change. So how do we actually, confidently draw a line between what has life and what doesn't?
Okay, let's start with a really simple comparison. You versus a car. Now, a car moves, right? That seems like a pretty good sign of life. But when we start asking a few more questions, that's where it all kind of breaks down. Can a car grow? Nope. Does it need food, like actual nutrition for energy? Well, no, it needs fuel, which is different. And can a car have little baby cars? Definitely not. So asking these kinds of questions really helps us build our framework.
All right, so let's get to the official stuff. To make this whole thing crystal clear, scientists basically have a 7-point checklist. And if something meets all 7 of these criteria, boom, it's considered alive. This is pretty much our guide for spotting life wherever we find it. And here they are. Ready? Movement, nutrition, growth, respiration, that's breathing, excretion, which is just getting rid of waste, responding to things around you, and finally, reproduction. If something checks off all 7 of these boxes, it's alive. So let's zoom in on a couple of these, shall we? First up, we've got growth. And listen, this isn't just about getting bigger. For living things, growth is a permanent, irreversible increase in size. And crucially, it happens from the inside out.
Think about it like this. You can't fit into the clothes you wore when you were 5, right? That's because you have grown. Your body has changed from within. But those clothes, they're non-living. They've stayed the exact same size this whole time.
Okay, next on the list is movement. This one seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? I mean, animals walk, birds fly, fish swim. Easy. But the thing is, the ability to move isn't always so dramatic or obvious.
And this brings us right back to that snail shell. Just because something looks totally still doesn't mean it fails the movement test. And plants are the perfect example here. They don't get up and walk around, but they absolutely move. You've got sunflowers turning to face the sun, flowers opening and closing their petals, and vines actively climbing and twisting themselves around a wall. It's a different kind of movement for sure, but it is 100% movement.
Okay, so now let's really put these rules to the test. Let's take something that looks completely non-living at first glance, a seed. How can this tiny, dormant little thing possibly be considered alive? Well, scientists and gardeners figured this out with experiments just like this one. What you're seeing here are seeds being put into different pots with all sorts of conditions. One gets sunlight but no water, another one gets way too much water, and so on. The whole goal is to find that exact, perfect recipe to trigger life.
And what these experiments show us is what a seed needs to germinate, or sprout. It needs water to soften up that tough outer shell. It needs air to breathe. And yes, seeds actually breathe. How cool is that? And it needs just the right amount of light or dark. When all those conditions are perfect, that little seed finally wakes up and starts to grow.
Now, the journey from a seed to a plant is incredible, no doubt. But some animals go through transformations that are even more, just mind-blowing. We're not just talking about getting bigger here. We're talking about a complete reinvention of their entire body. So let's take the mosquito. It has 4 totally distinct stages in its life. It starts as a tiny egg on the water. Then it hatches into a larva, which looks like a little worm wriggling around. From there, it becomes a pupa, which is kind of a resting stage. And then finally, an adult mosquito breaks out and just flies away.
And when you look at all 4 stages at once like this, you can really see just how wild that transformation is. I mean, the larva looks nothing like the pupa, and neither of them looks anything like the adult mosquito it's about to become. Each stage is a total reinvention.
But hey, mosquitoes aren't the only ones with an incredible life story like this.
Frogs also go through a really dramatic change called metamorphosis.
So a frog starts as an egg in the water, which hatches into a tadpole. And a tadpole is basically a fish. It lives completely underwater and breathes with gills. But then it starts to grow legs, its tail shrinks and disappears, and, this is the big one, it develops lungs. It completely transforms into an adult frog that can live on land. It changes its body, its home, and even the way it breathes. Just amazing.
So all of these stories, the seed, the mosquito, the frog, they're all part of a much bigger, unifying idea that connects every single living thing on the planet.
And it's called the life cycle. It's the journey that every living thing takes, from birth or sprouting, through all the stages of growth, to becoming a mature adult that can reproduce, creating the next generation and keeping that whole pattern going.
This quote from our source material really just nails it. Why are these cycles so important? Because reproduction is the thing that keeps a species going. Plain and simple. Without it, life would just stop. So the life cycle is what ensures the continuity, the never-ending story of every kind of plant and animal on Earth.
So being alive is really a story of constant, incredible transformation. It's happening all around us all the time, from a quiet little seed that holds the blueprint for a giant tree to a little aquatic larva that's going to one day take flight. Now that you know what to look for, what's the next life cycle you're going to stop and notice? Thanks for joining this explainer.